That's my blood. That's my blood. It's a lot of my blood.
Alright, I'm just gonna say it. Uncharted 2 is not the best out of the bunch, but it's not a bad game. I understand that it's a favorite of many, but looking back at it in 2024, needless to say, these past 15 years have not been kind to it. It is still very fun to play though, and still has some of the most memorable action sequences to date, but those sequences suffer from unreliable gameplay, weird enemy movement patterns, and crappy weapon sound effects. Let's dive into it and discuss the good and the bad. Right off the bat, you are thrown into what is probably one of the most iconic openings in all of game. The train hanging off of a cliff is one of those scenes that genuinely sticks with you, and it immediately piques your interest and your curiosity with what this game has in store. The story is a little more interesting, and the pacing was better than the previous title, but the magical elements that made its way back into the midpoint of the game didn't really click with me. Typically, I am not a huge fan of a story like this because it starts off somewhat realistic, but has a plot twist dependent on the villain becoming a magical threat to the world, which breaks the story down for me to something little to no intrigue at all. Still, it is enjoyable enough for me to be able to complete the game, and that is largely due to the pacing near the end that is packed with drama and action. And luckily there were multiple humorous instances during the game that made me laugh and kept the lighthearted atmosphere which these games pride themselves on. The story does, however, make attempts on having more serious moments, but I personally feel that they didn't really resonate with me, and they didn't make me feel the way that the developers maybe had intended. For instance, when Nate goes off to fight Lazarević on his own, the big villain, it felt a bit cliche, and also fails at developing Nate as a character, because his motivation to do so was strange, considering that Elena was busy dying from a grenade gut shot. Which is a shame, because in all of the Uncharted games, I think the only one with genuine character development was in number 4. But I get it, these games were meant to be an action adventure. They were meant to be fun. I just wish they added a bit more consequences to Nate's actions, because for the most part he gets away with everything. On the other hand, the set pieces that the game puts on display are still some of the best in the industry, and it really keeps the game enjoyable from start to finish. One other thing that is mainly my own personal conviction, the amount of slander they use is a bit uncomfortable, so if you are also someone that is bothered by it, be prepared to hear a lot of it, but if it doesn't bother you, it probably won't be an issue. But moving on to gameplay. But first, hit that like button, hit that subscribe buttons. If you haven't already, you'll feel good, I'll feel good. It's a win-win. Although the combat is easily the weakest point, for the most part the gameplay holds up and delivers an easy enough to get used to type experience, and it keeps you somewhat engaged. Nate's movements are much more realistic. Besides the climbing, he looks like a jacked up monkey still. And he doesn't zip around when running like he did in the first game. The graphics as well are very impressive. I mean, for its time. And it kind of holds up today, making it not that hard to look at. But I have to give it, it's really impressive for what they had accomplished on the PlayStation 3 that time. But back to the combat real quick. I say it is the worst aspect because it felt like most of my shots were unreliable. In many instances, I would aim for a clear headshot and the enemies would still remain standing. And for the most part, they felt like bullets one just taking up to 5 or 6 body shots to drop, which was kind of disappointing.
Look out!
I have to give credit where credit is due though. The riot shield enemies were a nice way to touch things up initially or to shake things up. But again, they get very easy to take out once you get used to them. And the diversity doesn't stay fresh for very long. Although it was nice that you could use the riot shield. That was fun. So yeah, not a big fan of the combat. And I personally prefer the first game's combat over this one. And looking back on the set pieces, the gameplay part of it was easily the most impressive.
Holy shit!
What Naughty Dog was able to accomplish with the hardware and the technology available at the time really makes it look like other developers aren't even trying. In many ways, Uncharted 2 was a major step up from the first game, especially during that time, but it was disappointing compared to what I had originally remembered it to be. All in all, I had fun playing through this game again, but it definitely was not the experience I remember so fondly. And if you were to try it out for yourself, all I can say is just to try and have fun, but don't expect something spectacular. It's a quirky story, it has some good action scenes, good set pieces. It's an all-time classic, definitely, and it is a lot of fun, but I think the hype and the glaze surrounding this game might be a touch too much. But if you made it this far in a video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it because it helps this video out a lot, especially if you've not finished the bloody thing. I'll catch you with Uncharted 3 next week. Until then, stay safe and may God bless you all.